Hello and welcome to another video. This will probably be in two parts uh, because it's going to be an in-depth study. I want to address a topic that has been coming up over the last little while. It's called deconstruction of the Christian faith. And if you're on YouTube and probably seen these videos, but it to me it really goes to a deeper issue, and that is not only Christians who have been celebrities or known in the Christian atmosphere, um, saying that they no longer believe in Jesus, but it's also about people not having faith, people not believing in God, people rejecting Christianity. And I know that I did a previous video, so you don't believe in God. This is going to be a little bit different from the standpoint of what can we put our faith in, and that's one of the things that I really want to address in this video. I care about people's struggles with their faith. I care about the questions that people have about, is this real? Is this just something that humanity has made up? Is this just something that is so ingrained in our culture that people believe but has no real evidence, pardon me, to it. And so that's what I want to kind of address, and continue to kind of delve in this topic. So this video, as you can see, is for those who have doubt how to handle the deconstruction of the Christian faith. And even if you are not a believer in Jesus, or have never believed in God or in Jesus, or gone to church, or even maybe you've gone to church but you don't believe in going to church, I want to say, if you would take the time and watch this video, I hope that it would be informative and very helpful for you as well. So having questions to me isn't a bad thing. I'm full of questions. I remember growing up and my mom would tell me to do something and I would always say, why? Why, Mom? Why? Why do you want me to do that? And it would drive her crazy because she just wanted me to, whether it's clean my room or time to go to bed or have a bath, whatever it is, and that's the thing that it wasn't that I was trying to be, argumentative. It's just, I just want to understand what she was thinking. I want to understand, why was I getting this instruction? And so that kind of characteristic or trait, I've had that my entire life. And so when it comes to this, I ask a ton of questions. I welcome questions. I like thinking. I like trying to, and I'm not going to always come up with an answer, and maybe I'll come up with wrong answers, but I do enjoy pondering things and trying to understand why about something. So when somebody, asks the question, does God exist? Did Jesus actually walk out of the tomb? Is there anything solid that I can believe in, or is it all blind faith? What about pain and suffering in the world? Can I trust the Bible? Can I only trust parts of the Bible? How should I understand or read the Bible? Like, what does the future hold? What is there, life after death? Is there, what's going to happen? Does the Bible have anything to say about what's going to happen? How do we live in the current world that we live in, with technology, with maybe war coming, and these types of things? How do we live? And so I welcome all types of questions. I may not always have the answers, but I do enjoy thinking about them and trying to help people not just dismiss them and move on. If you have or are struggling with what you believe is true, then I hope that this video helps. That's really the goal of this video, is that I hope it helps you in some way. And so whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever you're going through, I really do care about you. I know that sometimes when I do these videos, I can be very technical. I can be very just kind of, here's the point of fact, and kind of go through it as a teaching. But I do really want you to know that I do care about people, what they struggle with, what they struggle to believe in, and the questions that they have. I'm not interested in those who already believe that they're right. I get a lot of comments about, that begin with, you're wrong. And that's pretty much where it ends. Like, they don't really give an alternative view. They just, like, I say something that they don't agree with, and so then I'm wrong. And I don't, I can't, like, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay, so you think that I'm wrong. You haven't really presented an alternative point of view, or a very well constructed point of view. I don't, like, I could just say, well, no, you're wrong. Like, and that doesn't help anybody. And sometimes I do, but that I really do care about where people are at as far as, what they believe in. So again, like I did with the other video, what this video is and isn't about. I am not saying that 100% of the Bible is true. So when I reference the Bible or passages in the Bible, I am not coming to you that you have to assume that 100% of it is true. I believe that if understood, that 100% of the Bible is true, that it is the Word of God. But my videos, I hope if you've seen a few of them, it doesn't assume that you have to assume that 100% of the Bible is true. That's not a prerequisite to talking about these topics. I'm not here to debate whether the universe is 10,000 years old or 13.5 billion years old. That is not, it doesn't matter to me how old you think the universe is. Again, that's not a prerequisite to this video. This video isn't about moral issues like the LGBTQ plus issue, or abortion, or politics, or conservatism versus liberalism, or Democrat versus Republican. Like, it's not about any of that. It's not about you having to fit in a box of this is the type of church, or this is the type of belief that you need to have. There is one thing, and I'll get into it, that I believe we all have to have in common, and that is, who is Jesus. That's what this video is about. This video is about the evidence. Is Jesus of Nazareth worthy for us to put our faith in to save us? That, to me, is the one thing that this video is about. Was he a man? Was he a prophet? Was he God? Or is he God? Because if God's eternal, then Jesus is eternal. If he is God, he required us to put our faith in him to save us. He says that he is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life, and no one comes to the Father but through him. That is John 14:6. And so, if that claim is true, if he is who he says he is, then he is showing, and it's not this exclusivity or exclusion faith. It's like, if there's only one road, let's say I have a cabin, and there's only one road in and out, I can only tell you the one way to get there. There's one road in, there's one road out. You could park, miles and miles away, I guess, and walk in. But if you're trying to get in through a car, there's one way in and one way out. That's how this works, is that because Christianity is different. It says put your faith in a person, not in a set of rules. I know that for a lot of people, Christianity is a set of rules. I had this conversation literally yesterday about how religion makes it about the rules. That is not how I see my faith. My faith, and that's what people, a lot of religious people, and a lot of non-religious people don't like that. They don't like that I kind of sometimes get in the face of their rules. I'm about a person. Jesus of Nazareth, and whether he's worthy enough to put our faith in him to save us. And so before you can ask why God about life, and the questions that you have to know that someone's listening. You have to know that God exists before you can ask why God. Because if God doesn't exist, then there's no point in asking the question. Again, here's a trigger warning, right? You will most likely be offended at some point in my videos. I don't pull any punches. If you've watched any of my videos, then you know that I think the current Western Christian church is in an abysmal mess. What I talk about and believe are the things I can back up or try to back up as best as I can. I welcome people to challenge me on it. I don't care how many doctorates someone has or how long they've studied the Bible. I will probably challenge you about something sooner rather than later. And that's okay. I'm not trying to have all the answers. I'm not trying to be arrogant I'm just saying this is how I understand it. This is why I believe, and try to back it up. And if you've got a counter argument that you can back up, and there's some good points to consider, I'm not here to argue or debate with somebody. I've studied for a long time. I'm always trying to learn, of course. But when I do one of these videos, it's not because I have an idea. It's not because, I was reading a Bible verse today and here's the thought that I had. No, like this is an intensive study throughout the scriptures of some of these topics. And so that's just where I come from. I listen to all the questions. I listen to all the objections. I try to watch where multiple people are coming from, what they see, and try to establish a worldview that I believe in, and all the reasons why. And so that's why sometimes these videos are way longer and way more in depth, but than what I think they're going to be. But I hope it helps people. And we should be willing to discuss issues without resorting to calling somebody a false teacher or a heretic or anything like that, and believing that my teaching and with the videos that I put out, I don't believe that they're going to send people to hell. I believe that if God exists and God is in control of salvation, then that is between the individual person and him. I'm here to share ideas. I'm here to share teachings that and concepts and ideas that I think are important, that might help somebody, in their walk or in their faith or in their search for answers. But I do not believe that my videos are going to be a contributing factor to sending somebody to hell, even if they're wrong, because I don't believe God is that small. I don't believe that he entrusts human beings with the salvation or sending people. I believe that every person will make the decision to either accept God's gift of salvation or not. If you've watched my previous videos on sin, we have all screwed up. We have all hurt other people. We have all been hurt. We all have anger and bitterness and wounds in our lives from things that people have done to us and the things that we've done to other people that they have about us. We just have to look at our world. Again, I talk to people who aren't people of faith all the time, who can see we are destroying our planet and we are destroying each other. That is sin. God says in Deuteronomy 30, I set before you this day life and death. Choose life. But we're not. We're choosing anger. We're choosing hatred. We're choosing divisiveness. We're choosing destruction to our very planet and our countries and the systems that we have. They're failing. If God doesn't exist, those things are still happening. But the Bible talks about that God says that we choose these things, and he warns us not to. He warns us to love other people, to accept other people, And those are the things that I talk about, and to forgive other people. And so, but he also talks about that we have made these mistakes, we have made these choices, and if we choose to reject him and continue to do our own thing, we will continue down this path of self-destruction. And the ultimate self-destruction is choosing eternally to reject God and end up in eternal hell of destruction. But that is our choice. We create hell on earth by the choices that we create, that we make, and we will choose eternal hell because of the eternal rejection of God. That's what I believe. And if you believe that, if you're a Christian or a religious person that believes that somebody like me who puts out a video can teach somebody something incorrectly and that God is going to send them to hell for that, that to me is living out of fear and not faith in who God is. And so I encourage you to watch my video, Does God Really Send People to Eternal Hell when they die? I encourage you to watch my video on sin and to understand, not from a spiritual or from this Christian word called sin, but to understand how the choices that we make in our daily lives bring death to other people and to our planet and to ourselves. And that is what the Bible calls sin. It's not a religious term. It's a term it's a concept we all experience every single day of our lives. And hopefully it'll help you understand why Jesus had to come. And so this will take some time. I'm already a number of minutes into this video and I've just begun, but I want to put this foundation in place. And if you will bear with me with the time, if you have to stop the video, if you have to pause it, if you have to go eat, take a bathroom break, but I hope that you will watch this video in its entirety, think about it, digest it, and I hope it helps you. I hope it helps give you a foundation. Establishing a foundation for somebody's core belief in life is going to take some time, but I want to try to show a 2,500-year timeline of history that we can verify, that I think shows God's working, and that Jesus is who he said he was, that he is God incarnate in flesh. And here's where our story begins. The Bible makes many claims about history, about God, morality, heaven, hell, world beyond our world, salvation, eternal life, etc. The question is, what is true? Is any of it true? How can we know? Can we really put our trust in what it claims? Our story begins in the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel in the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, covers a period from about 605 BCE or BC to 535 BC, depending on which terminology you use today. The Jewish people were exiled to Babylon for 70 years, and about 538 BC, Daniel was visited by the angel Gabriel and told of the prophecy concerning the coming Messiah. Even though the book covers this period of time between 605 to 535 BC, many scholars believe that the book was written about 165 BC because of the Dead Sea Scroll copies that we have. I will show you that even if the book was written in 165 BC, this would still be amazing. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 25 and 26, so again, the year is 538 BC, it says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and after the 62 weeks Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself." So here's what I want to break down. First of all, it's written, "Know therefore and understand." So this is going to take some study. It's not going to be rocket science, but we have to remember, if this is written in 538 BC or even 165 BC, 2,000 years ago, let's say, then we have to do a little bit of a breakdown to see what would they have understood. What would Daniel have understood at this point in time compared to what we understand today? So that's where a little bit of study is going to come from. Right at this point in history, the Jewish people are in Babylon. How they got to Babylon was that Jerusalem and their temple were destroyed in the siege, and the people were exiled into Babylon, taken captives. Okay, so Daniel's coming to this at the end of the 70-year period when the angel Gabriel comes to him, and we have two events listed, so that's why it's in red: a beginning event and a concluding event. And then in the blue part we have the time frame. So it says that event number one, that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, because it was destroyed before they were exiled to Babylon, until Messiah the Prince. So that's event number two, and then the blue part is the time period. Okay, so here we are. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince. So we've got a timeline here. There shall be 7 weeks plus 62 weeks, and after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. So that's a total of 69 weeks. If you read in verse 24 of the passage, the angel Gabriel says that there are 70 weeks. So this part is only covering 69 weeks of the 70 weeks. Okay, but that's just an added note for the context of the passage. So the first thing we need to do is look if ever there was a command to restore and build Jerusalem. There's two references that I want to look at for getting this date of the event, because it did happen. In Nehemiah 2, it says, in early the following spring in the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was serving the king his wine. I had never before appeared sad in his presence, so the king asked me, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. Then I was terrified, but I replied, long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. The king asked, well, how can I help you? With a prayer to the God in heaven, I replied, if it please the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. The king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked, how long will you be gone? When will you return? After I told him how long I would be gone, the king agreed to my request. So there is the kingly or royal decree that Nehemiah should go and rebuild Jerusalem. And it says, so here's where we get the time. Early the following spring in the month of Nisan. So it tells us the time of year, month of Nisan, which is in the springtime. During the 20th year of the king Artaxerxes' reign. So I arrived in, and then it says in verse 14, so I arrived in Jerusalem 3 days later. I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. I had not told anyone about the plans that God put in my heart for Jerusalem. So that is from Nehemiah 2. And it says, so is there any historical record of King Artaxerxes, in history? And here we can see that it is. There is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. We're going to look at that right now. It says here, King Artaxerxes I, king of Persia, died in 425 BC. His reign was from 465 BC to 425 BC as the king of Persia. Right? So if we're looking at the 20th year reign of King Artaxerxes, 465 into the 20th year would be 445 BC. And that is what we have here. That we have the king Artaxerxes reigned from 465 BC to 425. As a side note, I found that the King Xerxes from the movie 300, because I was like, I think I've heard this name before. It is very similar. That was his dad from the movie 300, who reigned from 486 BC to 465 BC. So I thought, just from a little bit of entertainment standpoint, that that might be interesting to some people. I thought it was kind of cool. So Nehemiah 2 says, in the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of the king, which would be 445 BC, that's when we have this time frame. So here, the second reference is found in Jewish history. So if we go to the Jewish Virtual Library, it says that in 445, to 425 BC, Nehemiah the prophet rebuilds the walls of Jerusalem. The city is confined to the eastern hill. So we see this here. Sorry, just give me a second here. Okay, so here we got Jewish Virtual Library, and we scroll, and here we have, right here, 445 BC, prophet rebuilds the walls of Jerusalem. Okay, so we have now a date to begin. So when we look at this time frame, command to restore and build Jerusalem, Nisan, 445 BC. So then we have the time frame, this 7 weeks plus 62 weeks equaling 69 weeks until Messiah the Prince. Now, knowing the 445 BC, there is no Jew or Christian in the world who has ever said that the Messiah the Prince came in 444 BC, which would be, 483 days later, because 69 weeks, right, is just over a year, so it would be 483 days. So that would be 444 BC. Nobody believes who believes in the Messiah, whether Christian or Jew, believes that the Messiah came in 444 BC. So is this prophecy wrong? The question has to be asked if Jews and Christians, the two groups in the world, would read and believe this text and deny its seemingly obvious meaning of 444 BC. Is either there's another understanding, or this is a plain example of the Bible not being from God, because it would be wrong. There's another option. The New Living Translation says of the same verse, now listen and understand, 7 sets of 7 plus 62 sets of 7 will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem. So, what are we talking about here? 7 sets of 7 what? 62 sets of 7 what? Well, Numbers 14, 33 to 34, and your children will be like shepherds wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. In this way they will pay for your faithfulness until the last of you lies dead in the wilderness. Because your men explored the land for 40 days, you must wander in the wilderness for 40 years, a year for each day. Ezekiel 4:4-6 says, now lie on your left side and place the sins of Israel on yourself. You are to bear their sins for the number of days you lie there on your side. I'm requiring you to bear Israel's sins for 390 days, one day for each year of their sin. After that, turn and lie on your right side for 40 days, 1 day for each year of Judah's sin. So, what if, when we're talking about this week, sets of 7 days, it is 7 years. So here's what I mean. So if it says 1 week, that would be 7 days. But we know it's not literal days. But what if the punishment? What if the meaning is that for each day it equals 1 year, as in the previous 2 passages? So when we're talking about, instead of 69 weeks, like 483 days, we're actually talking about 483 years. 1 day being equal to 1 year. And so this is where it gets interesting. So we have we have this conversation that happens in the Bible that talks about 1 day for each year. Then we have this prophecy talking about these days of weeks, 7, 1 week being 7 days, 69 weeks. And so we have 483 years. Let's see if that's a proper understanding. The one more thing that I want to point out is that we right now have a Gregorian or solar calendar of 365.25 days per year. That is our calendar. That is the calendar when we talk about BC and AD. That is the Gregorian calendar. But at the Babylonian time and in the Bible, the calendar year was 12 months of 30 days. So that's 360 days per year, not 365. And so that is something that another, like I said, another piece of understanding that we need to have. And we can see this here. So in Genesis, for example, Genesis 7:11, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month of the 17th day of the month. So on the second month of the 17th day of the month, the floods started to come forth. Then in Genesis 7 verse 24, it says, then the water prevailed on the earth for 150 days. And then in chapter 8, 1 through 4, it says, but God remembered Noah and all the animals and all the livestock that were with him on the ark, and God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. Also the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained. And the water receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of 150 days the water decreased. Then in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. So 5 months later, from the 17th day of the second month to the 17th day of the 7th month, 150 days had passed. So this tells us in Genesis that the period of a month, 5 months, all being 30 days each, would equal the 150 days that the water was there. And so we can see that in biblical understanding, the days of the month was 30 days a month for 12 months a year. We can also see that ancient calendars, right? We talk about the Babylonian calendar. Well, for a period of time, they used 30 days times 12 months of 360 days. We can see that, there are a number of ancient calendars had 360 days. We have, in India, there are 12 months of that had 360 days a year. Mayan calendar was 360 days. Egyptians had a 360-day calendar, but then added, because there was a solar count, they were the solar calendar. This is where we get the 365. They said that there was 5 days added for holidays and feasts. So we can see, a number of and you can pause and look at this page and just seeing it's kind of a summary. It's just a blog of a summary of the things I'm talking about, but it does show a couple of other references where that there were ancient calendars that had 360 days per year. Okay, and the same thing here. In the Jewish Encyclopedia.com, we see that. Where did I? Sorry. I should have highlighted on this page. Anyway, so you kind of get the idea. I just can't find the reference on this page, but that they had 360 days per year. So the point of this is that this is the understanding that we need to have when we're looking at this, is that the Hebrew calendar at that point would have, or the Babylonian, biblical calendar was 360 days a year. So if we want to put this all together, we have a beginning date, 445 BC. We have the number of years, the 69 weeks, being 483 Jewish years of 360 days per year. So we need to convert it to our calendar today. If we're using BC as the starting event, and AD and these types of dates, we need to convert this 360 day calendar to our 365.25 day calendar. So 483 years times 360 days is 173,880 days. If we take that number and divide it into our current 365.25 days, we get our Gregorian year. So 173,880 days into 365.25. That gives us 476 years, 0.0575. When we take 445 BC, event number 1, plus 476, we go to 1 BC, which would be 444 years, and then 1 AD plus the remaining 32.0575 gives us 32 AD. And it gives us in that month a date. Remember Nehemiah 2, early the following spring in the month of Nisan? Well, the month of Nisan is Passover. So we've got the time frame, we've got the understanding of from the time to build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince is going to be 476 Gregorian years when we use 445 BC, and then add those years, we would come out to Passover 32 AD. Is the Messiah the Prince. Who do we know who lived in 32 AD? But Daniel goes on to say in verse 26, and after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. The word cut off, or the phrase, means to suffer a violent death or suffer the death penalty. Jesus suffered the death penalty during Passover, the month of Nisan, in the year 32 AD. That is why I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. In the first century, the Jewish people would have been able to see when Nehemiah was sent to rebuild Jerusalem, and add 483 years in their calendar to see when Messiah the Prince came. But today, with our solar calendar, and going back so far, we need to make this conversion. We need to have this understanding. But they would have understood. They would have known, because of the Bible, because of the scriptures, that the days of the year were 360 days. And you just simply add the 483 years from 445, which is in their own calendar, to rebuild Jerusalem. And they couldn't see it. And I think that's just a normal thing with human beings. I think that, we all want to know about our future or the future, and but we just miss it. We don't really see. If we don't believe that God exists, and we don't believe that the Bible contains things about the future or the past, and we don't really put the time into trying to understand these things, then we're not going to know. Like, we're going to think it's all based on blind faith. But to me, it seems very laid out here in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, when the Messiah was going to come. So let's assume this is true. Let's assume so far that everything I've gone through is correct. We come up with 32 AD, which Jesus died, Passover 32 AD. He suffered a violent death, and it was said that he didn't die for himself. He didn't die because of his crimes. It said that he died for our crimes. He didn't die for himself, but for us. So if that is true, then okay, maybe Jesus is the Messiah. But Jesus claimed to be God. And this is where it's important for me to go through part 2. And I hope that this part 1, I hope this sets a foundation. This takes up to the crucifixion of Jesus, or the time of Jesus. And in part 2, I want to go through Jesus's claims about the future. Because one of the things that a lot of people, I think, struggle with is, how can someone believe that a guy 2,000 years ago died on a cross to save the whole world, ended up in a tomb, and then rose again and walked out of that tomb 3 days later? And sure, there's logical arguments, and sure, there's historical evidence showing that crucifixion was occurring at that time, and sure that this Jesus of Nazareth did exist, and then, myth or history became myth, and myth became legend, And so then all of a sudden you take this guy, who might have been, been this great teacher, might have done some things, might have done these miracles, but or seemingly to be miracles, but to elevate him to the position of God, um, kind of came later on. And so there's these arguments, about that. And so, but one of the things isn't about his resurrection. It isn't about his death. To me, the greatest thing that in claims that Jesus made had to do about the future. And so when I was looking at Christianity and hearing that Jesus talked about he was going to return one day and gave a whole, like, when you break down the Bible, and I'll go through this in part 2, there's a lot of the Bible that talks about the second coming of the Messiah. It is unbelievable how much of the entire Bible, both in the Old Testament or Hebrew Scripture and the New Testament, talk about this event. And so when I started to understand it and started studying, to see if any of it was true, well, that's what I'm going to share in part 2. So I want to thank you for watching this first part. If this has made a difference for you, please just like it, subscribe, share, let me know that, if this was an encouragement to you, if you have any questions about it. But I hope it helps, and I hope that we've at least covered part of the journey here together. That I still think that whole portion is amazing. But like I said, to come to full belief, that was part 1, and in part 2 we're going to look at if Jesus was God, and who was he, who is he, and is there anything that we can trust about our reality, about faith, about can we put our trust in him, and what does the future hold, both some of the good things and the bad things, for us. So I want to thank you so much, and I'll see you in part 2.